Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Earth School Journey. I am Umi Steph. And as you'll notice, my co-host, my wonderful co-host, Uni, is not here with me today. She is feeling a little under the weather. And so in practicing what we preach, she is listening to her body and resting today. And so I just decided to hop on so that all of our regular viewers and the algorithm, thanks YouTube, would know that we're still here and that we will be back next week with our regular programming. We will probably do a slightly longer episode next week so that, we can make up for what we missed. And what I decided I would do today is, in keeping with our theme of vision, just kind of have a little story time with you. And what I wanted to talk about was the difference between having a vision and manifestation, and what that is in my life, like a real life example from my own life about the difference between manifesting and having a vision. Okay. And I think a lot of us get into spirituality through manifestation. And I would say that that was true for myself as well. Was that I started learning about law of attraction and really got into Abraham Hicks, and I learned about calling things in, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, those things. And at the time, I had my own business, and my business was flopping because I was dealing with some significant health issues. And I was basically on the verge of being homeless, and pretty much was homeless for a little while. I was kind of couch surfing, among other things. And so I really got into this idea of manifesting and trying to manifest finances, a house, basic needs, things that I've really needed at that time. And before I really get into the story, I guess what I want to say is that having a vision for your life, having a vision that comes from God, that comes from the divine, is not the same thing as manifestation. Your vision will manifest, but it's not the same thing. They aren't one and the same. You may use manifestation to bring the vision forward. But in my opinion, I think a vision is bigger. A vision is, what does God want for me? What does the divine want for me? What does spirit want for me? And I didn't have any concept of that at the time that I was going through, losing everything. And so it didn't occur to me that there might be something more. I think at that time there were three things that I wanted. I wanted money, I wanted a house, and I wanted a partner. I wanted a relationship. I wanted to get married. And those were the things that I was really trying to manifest. The money and the house were about stability for myself, for my daughter. And I wanted love. And so I went really hard. I had these giant sticky notes that I put all over the place. I had little sticky notes that I had all over the house with affirmations like, abundance is normal. I'm blissfully married. My perfect house is mine by divine right, right? And I would have these things. I was really calling in the house. I was going to look at houses and trying to get in the feeling of like being in a brand new house. And I constantly was working on manifesting while I was closing my business, while I was, living with a client for whom I was doing work for rent. That was the way we had exchanged it. She needed work. I had the expertise. And so I was doing work, and that kept a roof over my head. And I mean, I still kept losing stuff while I was doing this, like my car. I didn't know anything about cars. It was my first car, and I didn't put any oil in it. And I just when I say that out loud, it's really embarrassing. But I'm sharing because this was my life, right? This is exactly what I was living at the time. I was really trying to manifest these things, and I did. I manifested them. I manifested everything that I had really been going hard to try to manifest. I finally, after 20 years, the Navy, the Veterans Administration approved my my disability claim, and I suddenly came into a large amount of money, and I was like, oh great, now I can get my house and all of that. And I met my wife, I met Christy, and I had, or at least I was in the process of my, divine partner. And what I know to be true about manifesting things is that sometimes, and this was extremely true for me, we manifest things that our nervous system cannot handle. And for me, the money was something that I could not handle. At that time, I was so stuck in feeling unworthy that I put my faith in the wrong person. Someone who I knew, someone that I really trusted and thought had my best interest at heart. And they were a contractor, and I hired them to build a house for me. And they ran away with the majority of that money. And so I never got the house that I was trying to get because I was so focused on manifesting these things. I was focused on that, and I wasn't healing, and I wasn't asking Spirit what it had in store for me. What vision did Spirit have for me? I never asked those questions. This was really early in my learning about spirituality and manifestation and universal principles, and I hadn't taken classes or done any kind of, I wasn't dealing with herbs at that time either. So this was really early on, and I never checked in with God. I never checked in with Spirit. I never checked in with myself. I just was in survival mode, manifesting basic needs. And, losing all of that money. This happened over about 2 years, and it caused a lot of issues in my relationship. Caused a lot of mental health. My mental health declined significantly during this time. It was already pretty bad. That was one of the main reasons that my business was closing, was because I was really struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I just couldn't maintain life anymore. I was so dissociated that I wasn't able to to do things. And I managed to manifest all the things that I asked for. And except for the house. The house came later. The house came not through me building a house. It came through my wife and I getting a mortgage and buying a house. And that was when we went into buying the house, was when we really got into doing our spiritual work and not spiritual bypassing, and really just learning ourselves, knowing ourselves, coming to know ourselves through God's eyes. And it was then that, both of us kind of started looking at what is it that God wants for us. There was a point in our relationship where I didn't think we were going to make it. And honestly, we were in such a toxic, nasty place that probably most people would have said, you didn't need to be in that relationship. Y'all are too much. Like, you need to not be together. But that was when I started really working with a spiritual practitioner and working with herbs and learning more about the healing side of spirituality, not just the manifesting side. And that was when I started to learn what it meant to receive a vision. And in receiving the vision was that we were going to have land, and that Christy and I were going to be blissfully married, and that at some point we would be able to help other couples to work through their drama and come together in not just a physical way, but in a spiritual way, and bring them not only closer to each other, but to their children and to spirit. And that vision has pulled us through since then. And we're going on 5 years that we've been together. So, those first couple of years were rocky. The last 3 have been better, and they get better every minute, every day. It ebbs and flows. I'm not going to say it's always on the up, because it's not. It ebbs and flows. But what I've learned in this process is, as we get closer and closer to that vision, we don't always know which direction those steps are going. I don't always know what's next. I don't always know exactly what the end product is going to look like, because it looks very different than I thought it would. But it's no less beautiful. It's more so, even. And so what I've learned is that when you are trying to manifest, if you do get a vision, that while you're manifesting it, while you're saying your affirmations and affirming that, this is so, always remember to say this or something better. Because that takes you into God's will, not my ego's will. And I say my ego because my will and God's will are the same. But my ego is afraid, and my ego is trying to keep me safe. And so my ego tends to keep me small. And it can mess things up. When you're not regulating your nervous system, when you're not checking in with spirit, when you're not doing your spiritual hygiene. I didn't know what spiritual hygiene was. And I'm not talking about the term, but I mean like daily spiritual practice. What? Other than saying these affirmations, I got to do other stuff? What do you mean? Yeah, it was, I had no concept of that. And so I almost lost everything twice, which would have been totally devastating, as if it wasn't devastating enough the first time. And so, yeah, the the moral of the story I'm trying to share is to really understand the difference between just manifesting and having a vision that's pulling you towards it, and that you are using these tools of the law of attraction and manifestation and affirmations and doing your spiritual hygiene, not just to get stuff, but to get the vision of the highest and greatest good for your life. Because in my experience, that is so much more than whatever it is that you're trying to manifest from a place of worry, lack, fear, doubt. And you may even dress it up as a goal, but goals and visions are not the same thing. And Uni and I are going to talk about all of this stuff. So I'm kind of brushing past a lot of this, and we will definitely go more into detail next week when we have our real podcast episode. And we talk about manifesting a vision, and we look forward to it. And I know that this is just a short little placeholder, but we didn't want to leave you all hanging. We wanted to have you have something, and I hope that me kind of being a little vulnerable and sharing this real life story about my life and my experience manifesting, and my experience with learning about what a vision is and now pursuing a vision, which is a much slower process, I must say. Much slower process, but in the next couple of days, we should be closing on the loan to buy our house on the land that we originally were trying to build on. And we're getting closer every day to that big vision of, being able to help others through sharing our own experience. And it's so much sweeter. It's so much sweeter. And I really invite you to learn the difference between just manifesting things and situations and stuff you want, situations you want, experiences you want, and really go all out for that vision that God has for you. Go all out for that vision that your inner self wants. It is bigger than you can ever imagine. And you're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm sorry this isn't our usual content, but everything is in divine order. And I bless you until next week. And I bless my dear co-hosts and friend on this journey, Uni. Feel better. We miss you. And we will see you all next week. Peace.